Hey guys, what's up? It's Finite MTG, and we're back. This time we're going to record a very exciting pre-release sort of event of War of the Spark. We're going to open 6 packs, and we're going to try to build a sealed deck that doesn't suck. It might be pretty dependent on what mythics we open. Rare Planeswalkers ain't bad either, unless you get a Karn or like Tamiyo or something, but you know, Tamiyo's playable.
Tamiyo's okay.
But this format, it's been pretty rough so far. I think I've got a very low win rate, roughly 50-50, and in Legacy Cube, I just made my way up to 80% win rate, so it's kind of a big drop off. But enough talking. Let's get into this pool. See what we have. Do have 1 trophy so far, so that's not the end of the world. All right, looks like Domri is one of our rares. And, whoa, we have Ugin, which is frankly absurd. It just slots into every deck. Pluses pretty powerfully, and has some good minus.
Too.
Yeah, so we have Awakening. I think I've gotten like 2 or 3 of these at this point. It's a really good card. The only problem is it makes a legendary thing. So if you get the card back, which I have been able to do, then you just kind of sit there awkwardly. But looks like we also have like an Arlen, couple band togethers, so we might have a solid green deck. Let's take a look though. Deliver unto Evil is pretty sweet as well. Green black was the color of my first sealed pool, and again, it wasn't like spectacular. Whoops, wrong sort. But it was still pretty exciting. I think Obnixilus is pretty overrated. It's either like 2 Altar's Reaps or just like bad Oblation. It does deal damage to your opponent, but you never really want to be giving them 2 cards for their 1 in the late game. So let's start with Ugin in our deck because that's definitely making it no matter what. I think Saheeli's Silverwing is fairly likely to make it as well. It's just like a decently statted card. No color requirements, which is nice. And I think green's going to be our best color, so let's start adding some of that stuff. We have an Arlen, another 6-mana Planeswalker, a couple Primordial Worms, which, not great or terrible. Start with Awakening, though. Crocodile's solid. We don't have too much in the 5-mana slot, so we can start with this one in our deck. Crawl Stinger's pretty good. We're going to come back to New Horizons. We have 3 of those. Evolution Sage is decent. Like, it has a fine fail rate, and then if you can get this card to work, it's just insane. I've seen this card do very, very strong things. With a Johnny, for instance, this card is just busted. But you don't need a Johnny for the card to be very good. So band together, gonna play every copy of that we get. Pollen Bright Druid, that's a pretty good one as well. We have Death Sprout and Leyline Prowler as some nice green-black cards, so that might be good enough incentive for us to play black. But we're gonna take a look at some of our other colors as well. We have Domri in red, and we also have a couple Jaya's Greetings, so that might pull me into red. But looking at some of the other colors, pretty disappointing. Half of our cards in white are just 2-power creatures, so that's not really where you want to be. In fact, maybe even more than half with the triple Rising Populace, triple Martyr for the cause, Pouncing Lynx. Makeshift Battalion at least has the decency of 3 power, but yeah, just not really very exciting stuff. The best card in white is going to be Prison Realm, at least in this pool, and kind of in general. I mean, Oketra's insane, right? But we're not that lucky. Enforcer Griffin, pretty solid card. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to end up blue. We do have a couple copies of the Bounce spell. It's pretty nice, but it doesn't really look like we have a way to end a game. Mostly just like tempo, card advantage kind of stuff. Jace's Triumph, which is really divination. Sometimes you're going to get that 3rd card, but you're not really losing that game, are you, if you're playing a divination with a Jace on the battlefield? So, Kiora's Dambreaker, not terrible. Eternal Skylord, that's a strong one. Crushed Descent, definitely heard some controversy over this card. Some people think it's plain unplayable. Some people think it's bad. I've heard people liken this card to Mystic Snake or similar, or Frilled Mystic, and I'm not totally sold on that, but I don't think we're going to have to worry about that this time. I don't think we're going to end up in blue. Let's see. what do we have farther over in terms of multicolored stuff? The red is pretty unexciting. We do have a couple Jai's Greetings. And we do have the Domri as well, so we could splash red. Wouldn't be too unreasonable with 3 new horizons, not to mention like Leyline Prowler. Let's check out some of our other stuff. Yeah, that's really it. We have Mobilized District, which not ideal in a deck that's going to be maybe 3+ colors, but it's still a man land, or maybe the politically correct term is person land, creature land, I don't know. I think that's going to be solid enough. For now, let's add this Saheeli Silverwing. And let's start adding the black cards, because I do think black is going to be our best pair. Interestingly, so green-black, according to Wizards of the Coast, is the archetype that's supposed to be multicolor. So, like, you might have heard of 5-color green, but this format is more about, like, 3+ color green-black, which is pretty funny. And the only real pulls into green-black being the deck where you're able to fix your mana, splash for more things, are the 2 uncommons that I happen to have right here, Leyline Prowler and the Death Sprout. As this is basically a murder plus rampant growth, and this is like a, I don't know, Gifted Aetherborn and Birds of Paradise. Just throw some card names together. Let's take a look. So Price of Betrayal, I haven't had too much of a chance to play with this one yet, but I have not been very impressed by it. It is potentially 1 mana kill a Planeswalker, and in Sealed, right, there's 1 Planeswalker per pack, so chances you'll face Planeswalker at some point during the games are pretty high. Doesn't really do that much if you were just playing against a Planeswalker on 6 or more loyalty, so that's pretty unexciting. It's a good card. I think it'll be a good sideboard card against the Amass decks in draft, but this is Sealed. No one's cobbling together that much synergy, so don't have to worry about that. Duskmantle Operative is not a particularly exciting card. Most of the time this card's just going to be a bear, but it is a bear with an upside. So that's roughly a C+ in terms of card evaluation. I think it's something you're almost always going to want to play. Sorin's Thirst, pretty decent card. Definitely playing the first one. I do like Davriel. It's not ideal. The game has to go a little bit longer for it to do something, but at its worst, it's like Mind Rot and a half, but it takes a long time to get there. At the literal worst, it just gets countered or something like that, or makes your opponent discard something irrelevant. But I think it's still a perfectly fine card. Deliver Unto Evil is definitely a spicy one. I'm not sure how much I'm going to use my graveyard in this deck, so we're going to wait on that one as well. I skipped over Kaya's Ghost Form. I hate this card. I think if you're playing a really aggressive deck, maybe you're playing like the Raging Crunches or something, right? You're able to just pay 1 mana and basically give your super aggressive 4/3, like not quite Undying, but a little bit similar. Just save it for 1 mana. I think if you're doing that, then it's fine. That could even be something that I do with this pool, as I do have Ob Nixilis, which is another aggressive card. I do have some decent things in red, but I think trying to build an aggro deck in Sealed is a mistake the vast majority of the time. I think it's fine if you have like a second deck built that's like a transformative sideboard. If you're playing with your control deck and your opponent's control deck is just a million times better, and you have very low chance in the late game, you're going to have to do something in the early game. Like, logically speaking, unless they just draw terribly, that's going to be your only way to win. So I'm not opposed to aggro decks as sort of a sideboard. So Charity Extractor, that's a card I've been reasonably happy with. I think I'm definitely playing the first one, not sure about the second. Vraska's Finisher. So this is basically the 4-mana 3/3 from Ixalan, except it doesn't just kill planeswalkers that were damaged. Or I'm sorry, it doesn't just kill creatures that were damaged, it also kills planeswalkers. Bit of a spoiler there in my misspeaking, but I think the card's solid. You really need to be able to kill planeswalkers in this format, and the fact that it's basically a creature with a combat trick attached, provided that your opponent blocks, or provided that their planeswalker takes damage, I think that is a solid card. So we're gonna try one of those in the main. Shriek Diver. I've actually been pretty impressed by this card. It's just a 3-mana 2/1 flyer on the surface, but the fact that it has haste makes it a good top deck in the late game. Evasion's really, really important in this format, as there are so many planeswalkers running around. You really need to be able to answer them. So I'm happy about that. So next up is Ob Nixilis's Cruelty. It sounds pretty gross, but it's a great card. 2 and a black, basically kill anything. It's not literally anything, but just answers so many things, and it answers them for good. You can have like your 4-mana 3/2, like that when it dies, amass 2, but it's not going to die to Cruelty. It's going to be exiled, so no amass for you. Card's just insanely efficient. Might even be constructed playable. I'm not really going to speculate on that, but it's just probably the best common in the set. It's definitely up there. Though there are some sweet ones, and I think we'll learn more about that once we get to draft, but for now, draft is not available, so I'm going to stick to sealed. But Cruelty, definitely making the deck 100% of the time. Would consider splashing for it, even with poor fixing, so. Got a 4-mana Mind Rot, which is a playable card, but not really where I want to be. I like my Mind Rots as 3 mana and having 3 loyalty and potentially damaging my opponent. I've had a lot of opponents play their last card out against Davriel, like afraid that I'm going to make them discard it, and their last card a lot of the time is a land. Don't do that. That's going to lead you to take 2 damage on your upkeep. Just hold the card in your hand. It's not worth it. You're going to keep taking damage. So we could play another Charity Extractor, and that wouldn't be crazy. Right now we're at 17 playables. We're definitely playing Death Sprout and Leyline Prowler. So New Horizons, Primordial Worm. We already have a million 3-drops, so that's going to be a little bit awkward. Could even play Ob Nixilis. I'm looking at Jaya's Greetings and Domri as things that I'm excited to splash, or at least interested in splashing. The best removal spell, again, to splash would just be Prison Realm, but I don't think it's worth splashing white. I'm not excited by the color at all in this pool or in general. So yeah, could end up playing these 3 cards, and that would put me to 22, so that's pretty close. We could play like 1 New Horizons. Probably going to want more than 1, but we do have some other ways to fix our mana. Let's start like this, though. I think this is pretty decent build. Not sure about the district, but I wouldn't mind playing Gateway Plaza in this deck. I found the card is fine and sealed, not too slow. We could end up playing a Primordial Worm as well, as we do have just so many 3-drops. Or like another New Horizons, that's a possibility. But I'm pretty happy about, all the stuff that we have in the sideboard. And I do think 23 is probably where I want to be in terms of spells. Let me see here. So our best creatures are going to be Leyline Prowler, Evolution Sage. I'm going to count Awakening as a creature. Ugin and Arlen, they make creatures, so they're close enough to creatures that I don't mind counting them as that either. We've got a bunch of... these are fairly medium. These are all medium. I think having a 4-mana 2/3 flyer is actually pretty nice. When I played my green-black deck originally in this sealed format, one of the biggest problems I had was just dealing with flyers. I had 3 Sorin's Thirst as the majority of my removal, and my opponent would just play a Thunder Drake, and I would be in so much trouble. Not to mention Thunder Drake, just a very strong card. It's been overperforming, I think, every single time I've seen it. It's just really great. If you can get it up to 4/5 especially, I just don't know how you are winning. If your opponent's double spelling twice, right? Like that's pretty bad news for you. Alright, so best spells gonna be like double band together, Cruelty, Death Sprout, why not? I think these are all pretty medium, and these are all in the splash. So yeah, this doesn't look too unreasonable to me. New Horizons, we are only playing one of them. We might want a second depending on how easy it's going to be to splash in this deck. Also possible that Evolution Sage is not going to be good enough in this deck. We don't have very many counters. Not counter spells, but counters that we can place on permanents. We've got, what, 2 Planeswalkers? No, 3 Planeswalkers. Funny that I'm counting Domri as a non-creature spell, but Ugin and Arlen are creatures, but regardless, yeah, I don't know. Makes me ask a similar question about Pollen Bright Druid. It's almost always just going to be 2 mana for a 1/1, put a counter on something. The majority of the time it's going to be putting a counter on itself. But I think just kind of like the Duskmantle Operative, as a bear with an upside, I think that's probably just good enough. Though I don't want to play a 3 mana 3/2 that doesn't really affect the board. So let's take a look at the counters that I have. We have Awakening of V2 Ghazi. Huge difference between a 9/9 and a 10/10 land for sure, especially when there's no trample attached. So I'm not really going to count that one. There's Ugin, there's Arlen, and I think I think Arlen is even a better reason than Ugin, just because Arlen puts the +1/+1 counters on creatures as well. So when you're proliferating, you're not only putting counters on Arlen, but also the tokens. But other than that, it's really not very much. There's Pollen Bright Druid, and there's New Horizons, I think. I think that's... Well, there's also Davriel. I lied. So I have 4 Planeswalkers in this deck. That's not bad. That said, though, how many cards is that for me to proliferate onto? Because what I don't want to do is just play a card that's only good when I have one of my few best cards in play, right? Because if I'm playing a card that's like, you win the game if you control a Planeswalker, well, if the Planeswalker is Ugin, it might just already say you win the game, right? So I don't want to play a card that says that. Then again, like Davriel and Domri, definitely weaker Planeswalkers. So if I could, pump them up, it might be worth it. But yeah, I think other than the Planeswalkers, Pollen Bright Druid and New Horizons are the only cards that benefit from the Evolution Sage. So might actually be taking this one out. Surprising twist for sure, but just got to make sure like card is actually good in every single deck. I mean, this card is great with synergy, right? But without the synergy, what does it really do? That said, as a 3 mana 3/2 with upside with about 6 cards in my deck, it might still be good enough. It might be better than anything else I'm doing. But I'm definitely willing to think about like a New Horizons, a second one that is, or maybe a Primordial Worm if I want more top end. I don't think I want to play Obnixilis. That might be wrong. Maybe I just need to play the removal I have, but I think this card is just really not where I want to be in my controlling decks. Not dying to play a second Extractor. So yeah, I think these two are like the main options for me here. So let's take a look at the curve and the mana, because the curve is going to determine whether or not we want Primordial Worm, and how good the mana is going to determine whether or not we want second New Horizons. So we have 5 2-drops, 11 3-drops. Shall I even go on? There, I mean, 11 threes is just an enormous number. That's almost half of my deck. So I'm trying to figure out whether or not it's necessary to play a New Horizons. Because I think Primordial Worm, there's a decent chance it would improve my deck by being in here. But let me take a look at the mana constraints of this deck. So right now we have Leyline Prowler, Death Sprout, New Horizons. I think those are the only ways I'm fixing my mana, but that's already quite a few, not to mention the Gateway Plaza on my sideboard. It's a little bit risky playing Mobilized District with something like Death Sprout in your deck, but I'm not too opposed to that. I think I am going to cut this Evolution Sage. I think I'd rather just have a Primordial Worm, which is pretty crazy. Not where I expect it to be going in, but I have so many 3s already. Granted, it's closer to 9 than 10, because Domri on the splash is usually not going to be in play on turn 3. That said, Domri doesn't need to be in play on turn 3 in order to be powerful. as just half of an Anthem for my team. That's pretty good. Adding mana is nice, and fighting is also effective. So I think I'm pretty happy about this. So how many ways to splash is that? New Horizons, Prowler, Death Sprout. So that's a few. All right. Now I think we just want to add lands. I don't think we need a second New Horizons in this deck, which is nice. I want to limit the number of plays that don't affect the board that I have on turn 3. And then after this, maybe we can build a black-red super aggressive deck and just like see how it looks, but I don't think that's something I particularly want to play. So the mana is not exactly right. Well, is it exactly right? I think I saw the numbers a little bit off. No, okay, it's not going to be. 3 mountains is going to be too high. Maybe we could play 2, but my incentive is to play 1. So Death Sprout obviously needs a basic in order to fix us for red mana. So we're going to need at least 1 mountain there. We could play Gateway Plaza and Mobilized District as our last 2 lands, and this could just be the deck. But now let's check and just see exactly how many sources or how many symbols of each color I have. So this is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 total green, so that's quite a few. Black we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, so that's actually pretty close. And then just 3 red, so I believe that's 15 and 11. We have 6 and 8. We're going to be playing the Gateway Plaza, so it's really closer to 9 and 7. I think that's probably fine. I think we can play the Mobilized District in this deck. It's definitely a bit greedy, but I like giving myself access to a land that it essentially works like a spell, just because it, to some extent, prevents me from flooding out or just not being able to have action in the game. So I think we're going to try it like this. There's definitely an argument for not playing this Mobilized District. It's a little bit greedy, not going to lie. But I think this deck is solid. It's not doing anything broken, right? Like, I think Ugin is probably the best card. One of the God Eternals would really be nice, but I don't think that's happening this time around. We're not getting anything nearly that broken into play. Take like Bond of Revival, but even that's from your graveyard, so not to mention God Eternals never hit the graveyard. So anyway, all right, so we're gonna save this and we're going to open up a black-red deck just as a potential alternative, something aggressive that we could do. Problem is we have 3 Burning Prophets as our 2-drop in red, so you can already see this is just not exactly how this deck wants to play out. The Charity Extractors are pretty awkward in a deck that wants to be aggressive. Could play the Mind Rot, that's not even bad, it deals 2 damage. Soren's Thirst, 2-drop. Gonna want to play the Crotch and the Hellion, maybe even Samet Sprint. Not opposed to the 4-mana 2/3 flyer. Definitely playing Ugin, not because a 6-drop is good in aggro, but because we need the power level in order to have a chance. Could play Davriel as well. Cruelty for sure. I don't want to play a Ghost form, but if we have to, then maybe we have to. Yeah, I just don't want to play this deck. I think it's fine as something to sideboard into if I'm really desperate, but this is not where I want to be. So Burning Prophet, is that instant or sorcery or just any non-creature? Okay, so it's effectively prowess, but only power, and it lets you scry, so that's not bad. I think I am going to want Samet's Sprint just as a potential combat trick. We're just short on playables here with this deck. Play like Kaya's Ghost form. Yeah, this is looking really janky. I don't think I want a main deck Price of Betrayal. I'm not opposed to main decking something like this card when the format comes out and it's brand new, but I think at this point we have a good enough idea that the card is not insane. I would rather just play cards that I think are going to be decent. Granted, I do have Sarkhan's Catharsis in my main deck, but the reason I'm playing that card is more as a Lava Axe, because this deck is going to try to be aggressive and finish games as soon as it can. We could play a Saheeli in this deck. We do have an awful lot of non-creature spells, so that's actually probably decent. 12 other ones at this point. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So that's going to make a decent stream of 1/1s, I think. I don't know if I've seen Saheeli be -2'd yet, but it does have another ability. It's not just like a bad Monastery Mentor. Play one more Burning Prophet just to round out the curve, and like another Kaya's Ghost form, I guess. At this point, we're really reaching for playables. Play like Mizium Tank, but I really hate this card. It does effectively become a 4/3 trample whenever you play a non-creature spell. Maybe that's worth trying out, just because I don't know whether or not the card is as terrible as it looks. Really not super happy about it, though. The good news is it has Crew 1, so I can use my useless Burning Prophet to turn my Mizium Tank into a 3/2 trample. Awesome. Alright, well, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to add some lands and save this as a deck, but this isn't really a deck. Don't be fooled by this ugly pile of garbage. This is not a deck. The other one is, I think we can do, yeah, add 1 swamp and then add District as the last card. Yeah, that seems decent. Okay. So there's a world where I would want to play the red-black aggressive deck. 16 lands and an Ugin's a little bit awkward, but could potentially close out a game or two. Though I'm much happier with this one. Feel like the power level is much higher here. Consistency-wise, I think this deck is the way to go. But like I already said, thank you for watching. I don't think I'm going to make a video myself piloting the matches, but thanks for hanging out. I will definitely record some of this format at some point. Maybe it'll be a PTQ or something similar, but thanks for watching, and see you again soon.